There's a red moon rising on the Cuyahoga River, rolling into Cleveland to the lake.
Between the years of 1868 and 1969, Cleveland, Ohio was known to be a very industrialized city. Many of Cleveland's factories and industrial centers that produced gasoline, paint, metals, and refined oil sat directly next to the Cuyahoga River. The Cuyahoga River is a river that runs through the heart of Cleveland. The industries utilized the river as a free dumping site for their waste and believed the river was there to help get rid of leftover pollutants. At that time, there were no laws in place to regulate what was being put into any water source, let alone the Cuyahoga River. As the 60s approached, so did the hardness of the river. It became one of the most polluted rivers in the United States. The people of Cleveland believed that the pollution of the river was a necessity in order for the industries to prosper. They used to say a dirty river was a sign of prosperity. Due to the oil slicks and the waste that sat on top of the river, between the years of 1868 and 1969, the Cuyahoga River caught fire 12 times, a record for any river fire in the United States. The pollution of the Cuyahoga River was finally brought to the government's attention after the fire of 1969. On June 22, 1969, around noon, sparks from a passing train ignited a foot to a foot and a half of oil and other waste material floating on top of the water. This resulted in the famous Cuyahoga River Fire of 1969. The River Fire of 1969 became the most famous of the Cuyahoga River fires due to the mayoral election that was taking place at the same time. The fire was the most publicized of all the river fires due to industries transitioning to technology and all the media that was in town for the election. People were also becoming more eco-aware, allowing sanitation of the river to become more important than pollution being essential for industrial prosperity. Photos published of the 1969 fire were in fact from previous fires occurring on the river. Although the river fire of 1969 was the most publicized, it was not the most dangerous, destructive, nor deadly. Data compiled from Ohio History Central state that the most destructive of all the river fires occurred 17 years prior in 1952, and the most deadly of all the fires was in 1912. The fire of 1952 produced over $1.3 million in damages, while the fire of 1969 did not produce any maximum damages. In 1912, 5 people died from the fire, but no deaths resulted from the fire of 1969. However, the fire of 1969 still brought a lot of negative attention to the city of Cleveland, resulting in higher pressure to become more eco-aware and to improve the sanitation of the Cuyahoga River. The agent responsible for the Cuyahoga River fires was the industrial waste being dumped into the river from local factories. Perceptions of the burning river claimed many people believed that the river itself was burning, when actually the oil waste and debris floating on top of the river is what actually burned. Though people were confused with this concept, they were fully aware of the pollutions and hazards faced with the Cuyahoga River. It was said that if you fell into the river, you would die.
And we all know about the river fire of 69, and as somebody who's interested in the history of Cleveland and Cuyahoga River, I know that wasn't the best fire. You know, I know there was other fires that could have burned down Cleveland had not the wind shifted from the north. I remember a 52 fire, I think. That was, I think that one probably would have won the prize for the best fire. I was actually working the day that the river caught on fire, actually working as a hatch tender on the ships. So it's kind of unusual when somebody would yell fire and tell you to run away from the river, because the river is generally water. But when you were working down on the river at that time, the river was like a cauldron. It would just bubble up, oxygen trying to get out of the river. It had a coat of oil on it. And you'd see rats float down the river the size of dogs, bloated from whatever it was that they ingested. And there was a rule that if you fell in the river, you immediately went to the emergency room in the hospital. So the idea here was don't fall in the river.
Pollution in the river did not allow for survival of many living species that reside beneath its surface. Fishermen who relied on the river struggled to catch enough to make a living. Elaine Marsh, an environmental activist, remembers her first time to the Cuyahoga River. It consisted of signs posted everywhere reading "No swimming," "No boating," "Polluted water," said Elaine Marsh. The water looked like oil and grease and paint. The Cuyahoga River fire affected the population of Cleveland and nearby surrounding areas. Because the Cuyahoga River eventually flows into Lake Erie, pollutants such as phosphorus and nitrogen were carried downriver and into the lake. These pollutants encourage and lead to eutrophication, a process that develops algal blooms. Algal blooms resulted in the mass extermination of fish in Lake Erie, which eventually were floating up and down the shores. To take steps towards improving the conditions of the Cuyahoga River, Cleveland initiated improvement to its sewage system and also began to monitor their water quality more closely. The mayor at the time, Carl Stokes, was determined to see change and clean up waterways across Cleveland, so he took his determination to Congress. Mayor Stokes brought large amounts of media attention, such as the Time magazine, to the issue on water pollution. Time magazine described the river as chocolate brown, oily, bubbling with subsurface gases, and it oozed rather than flowed. This led to a national movement to improve water quality. During the national movement for clean water, President Nixon was a supporter of environmental cleanup. However, due to the high price tag of cleanup, he vetoed a bill that was to help create national water quality standards. But Congress recognized the need for clean water and overturned his veto. This bill is known as the Clean Air and Water Act. The Clean Water Act stated that all rivers and bodies of water throughout the United States had to be clean enough to swim and fish by 1983. On January 1, 1970, another bill that was inspired by the Cuyahoga River fire was signed to protect the environment's quality and to create a council to ensure that the environment becomes or remains clean. This bill is known as the National Environmental Policy Act. The NEPA led to the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA. The EPA was given the responsibility to monitor and maintain environmental risks and regulate sanitary-specific policies. Another initiative taken to clean up the Cuyahoga River is the investment of over $3.5 billion by the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. Since 1969, this money has gone towards purification resources and developing new sewer systems. It is expected that Cleveland will contribute an additional $5 billion over the next 30 years to help maintain these sewer systems.
In terms of a grading system, years ago it was nothing but an F all the way. Now it's moving up maybe D+, C-. In
1987, the U.S. and Canada outlined the cleanup for its 42 areas of concern, including the Cuyahoga. Back in March, during one 6-day period, there were 3 reported oil and gasoline spills into the Cuyahoga, traced eventually to BP America.
Even though policies to clean the Cuyahoga River have been in place for several decades, there is still pollution present in the Cuyahoga River to date. But the improvements made towards cleaning up the river have made a significant difference. Today, the Cuyahoga River is home to 60 different species of fish and has not seen a fire since 1969. Although Cleveland received a negative stigma due to the river fires, it truly sparked a new era of environmental protection and safety.
Burn on, big river, burn on. Now the Lord can make you tumble, the Lord can make you turn, the Lord can make you overflow, but the Lord can't make you burn. Burn on, big river, burn on, burn on, big river,